You're listening to The White Rabbit, conversations on the art of presenting in a rather noisy world. Your hosts are Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. Matt helps leaders of international companies speak, write, and present with confidence. Alper is a communications trainer and a startup investor with a diverse portfolio of companies in Barcelona. If you like this podcast, please share it with friends and colleagues. Now, on to Matt and Alper for today's conversation.
Alper, today I want to pick your brain a little bit.
Go ahead.
And I've noticed, I've been doing this line of work. My line of work is basically teaching people who are not native speakers of English, how to present in English and do it well.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I've noticed a pattern. I've been doing this for about 10 years. And so I've noticed a pattern, and it happens in almost every client. So I wanted to pick your brain about that pattern and see if you have any thoughts on how I could be handling it better. Is that cool?
Okay. That sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. I've noticed that, and by the way, just a side note, as I was thinking about this, I've been thinking a lot about Blair Enns recently, and we've mentioned Blair Enns many times on this podcast. You know how Blair Enns has the 4 conversations that you go through with the client before the sale is completed? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a situation that comes up after the sale is completed. But as I was thinking about it, the reason I kept thinking about Blair Enns was because I was like, okay, this situation comes up after the sale is completed, but it might be very similar to what Blair Enns would say about one of those conversations before the sale is completed. So maybe I should, in addition to picking your brain here today, maybe I should also listen to the Blair Enns podcast again.
Yeah, we should pick his brain too.
Yeah, we should pick his brain too. I wonder if he would come on the show. That would be quite an honor. Okay, so the question that I wanted to ask, or the pattern that I wanted to ask you about today, is a crisis of confidence that in my line of work typically comes about 3 to 4 weeks after the work has started. And that's when
just to be clear, does it come to you or to the people you're working with?
Well, it comes to the people that I'm working with. So the people that I'm working with are having the crisis of confidence, and I want to be able to walk them through it better.
Okay.
So, and the crisis of confidence is that, let's back up a second. When they first come to me, so about a month before this happens or 2 months before this happens, depending on however long the sales cycle is, at some point before they decide to work with me, they're like, I have a problem and Matt can help me with it. So they kind of, in the first couple of weeks of the engagement, there's the honeymoon period where Matt is still the shiny new object. And whatever problems the client is having in the client's professional life, Matt's going to solve them. And then, and
that's not a bad position to be in. Yeah.
That's a great position. And that position lasts for about 2 weeks. And then
you're on the pedestal.
Pardon me? Yeah.
You're on the pedestal.
Yeah. I'm on the pedestal, and I'm on the pedestal for about 2 weeks. And then
you're taken down.
Yeah. And then I get knocked off the pedestal. And the way that looks is that usually about 3 or 4 weeks after the engagement begins. So it's time to knock Matt off the pedestal. And during this period, the 3 to 4 weeks after the engagement begins, the client has a kind of a crisis of confidence. And the client is thinking, the solutions that Matt is recommending, the road that Matt is taking me down, it feels unfamiliar. I don't like it. And since a lot of my work is in Turkey with Turks, they've come through an education system which is very heavy on grammar. And so grammar is their comfort zone that they can fall back on. So basically the client is falling back. The client, worried about the strange new road that Matt is taking them down, falls back on what is comfortable to them. And to a lot of the clients, for me, the client's comfort zone is grammar. And so, go ahead.
Just to make sure that I understand you clearly, when you say fall back to the comfort zone, you're not talking about an area that they feel confident. You're talking about an area that they blame their lack of confidence on.
They feel they lack confidence. So they're not confident about anything anymore.
Okay.
And so they fall back on where they're comfortable, and comfortable things tend to, in a non-confident situation, comfortable things tend to bring people confidence, or at least people go back to comfortable things with confidence. So they go back to their comfort zone, and their comfort zone is grammar, and that is absolutely none of the four things that I'm walking them through. And so at this point, I start thinking, well, the answer to the question, how do I solve the problem I came to Matt with? The answer to that question is not more of the thing that caused the problem that I came to Matt with. But I don't say that because, well, that's not very polite. So I've gone through a number of stages in how I've handled that over the years. Like I say, I've been doing this for about 10 years. And so back at the beginning, some years ago, many years ago, I would handle it by actually trying to address the question itself. And the question in my case would be, can you recommend a grammar book? And me being a native speaker of English, there is absolutely no way that I've never even seen an English grammar book. If you want to understand the grammar of a language, the last person that you should ask is a native speaker of that language. And so I would feel bad about myself because the client was asking me to do something and I was trying to do it, but I knew that what I was doing was worse than what they could get elsewhere. So Everybody was feeling bad in this situation. So it wasn't working. So about 8 years ago, I moved on to stage 2 of trying to handle this situation. And stage 2 was ignore the request or ignore the crisis of confidence. The client is having a crisis of confidence and just ignore it. Pretend that it's not happening.
I'm sure that worked out pretty well.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise. That didn't work out very well at all. So I moved on to stage 3. And I did stage 3 for a couple years, and because it worked a little bit better, not a whole lot better, but a little bit better. And stage 3 was acknowledge the crisis of confidence. So address it head on, talk to the client about it, but then try to address the client's crisis of confidence by outlining the 4 steps that we were going through. And at that, because there are 4 steps that I go through to get the client the results that the client is looking for. And when I would try to outline those 4 steps, the client's eyes would glaze over because they don't want to hear Matt outlining the 4 steps. That's boring.
They want to put you back on the pedestal and you're not helping them.
Yeah, they want to put me back on the pedestal, and that is not helping at all. So Matt is not on the pedestal still. He lasts a little bit longer, but he's not on the pedestal yet. So over the past couple years, I moved on to step 4. And step 4 is address the crisis of confidence. Don't ignore the client's crisis of confidence.
Thank God.
Yeah. So address the client's crisis of confidence. But instead of trying to outline the 4 steps that I'm walking them through, just stay high level and paint a picture of clients that I've worked with in the past, which basically goes like this. I worked with client XYZ, and they used to be in place ABC, and then they came to me, and now they're in place DEF. They're in a different place now. They're in a better place. And then client 2. Yeah. Okay. I didn't mean that the way it came out.
We put our clients into better places. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mean that the way it came out. They're in a better position. They're in a better position now. So they came to me and they're in a better position now. And then client 2, client 3, client 3, client 3, client 4. So usually it's 3 or 4 clients. And then my potential client who is having the crisis of confidence is much happier now. I'm back on the pedestal. They have the confidence that they need to go ahead with these unfamiliar 4 steps. So problem solved. And so I wanted to ask you, so my basic big picture theme is that Matt's clients about 3 to 4 weeks after the work starts are going through a crisis of confidence. And I just wanted to ask you, in your work, have you experienced a similar thing where clients, sometime after they have retained you, sometime after they've decided to work with you, they go through a crisis of confidence of some sort? And what do you do in that situation?
That's a good question. One thing that comes to my mind is not several weeks into the engagement, but several hours maybe.
Okay.
And usually in trainings, in corporate trainings especially, we start the day nice with the promise of a new perspective towards presentations, new perspective towards delivering the message, etc. And a couple of hours into that engagement, or in the afternoon, let's say, when we're talking about the actual slides or how to make them better, I dropped the bomb of, simplifying the slides and dividing them, if necessary, into multiple pages, etc.
Okay.
That, I would believe, is one of the areas I will be receiving the hardest pushback.
Okay.
As in, this is not familiar, and we don't like where you're leading us.
Okay.
I think that's in line with the sensation that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I can certainly understand that, because it is actually a new reality. Not reality maybe, but it's new uncharted waters that I'm trying to drag them into.
Okay.
And I think it's understandable that there is pushback. And when I ask, for example, some of the reasoning can be around losing detail or nuances that complicated slides can contain, or in some extreme cases, the simplification process can feel like, yeah, but we're dumbing down the presentation. So we're losing depth, or we're being overly simplistic. So it could be one of the reasons behind. And sometimes it's the simple resistance to change, because, I mean, the saying, it doesn't work. I mean, I don't remember the saying, but it's something like, this is how it has been done. This is how things go in this organization. This is how things have always been done. And here is this guy, me in this case, throwing a wrench into all these gears that have been working seemingly flawlessly for decades. But of course, there are enough problems so that I am taking place as a trainer in that setting. And people can resist the idea of doing things differently. And I think it's perfectly understandable.
When they are having this crisis of confidence, they're like, okay, well, I like this advice that Alper is giving, but it's not going to work in my world. What do you tell them? How do you help them through that crisis that they're having?
Well, again, from the example of simplification or simplifying the message or the slides themselves, what I try to do is to clearly communicate the benefits, like to explain how it can help the entire presentation or the data or whatever that they want to show more accessible, more easier to understand, not only to their specific audience, but to anyone who might be, participating in the meeting or the presentation. And I try to explain how it can be done without, let's say, losing essential information. And I ask questions. I ask questions about what is the most important thing that you're trying to convey here, because it cannot be 5 things. There's only one most important thing that they want to convey. There can be multiple important things that they want to convey, which is understandable, but there is only one most important. I ask that question, and then we somehow come up with a hierarchy of importance. And then we chart a new course for coming from top of that pyramid hierarchy, let's say, to the bottom. So we start with the most important one, and then we use the upcoming slides, which we created by dividing maybe one complicated slide into multiple. We use the upcoming slides as justifications for the importance, or let's say the level of the most important topic.
Okay.
I can also provide examples, like I can show them some before or after examples on how I took some complex information before, redesigned it, redistributed it among multiple slides, and use them as side-by-side comparisons to show how simplification doesn't necessarily mean loss of information. It can actually be used to enhance the, how should I say, the clarity of the message that you're trying to give. And I think my last point would be to talk about actively involving them. Like I wouldn't want to say, hey, this is how it is done. This is how it should happen if you want to succeed. No, I would seek their engagement, actually, especially the people who have the most concerns. and I will try to make sure that their ideas are heard, their needs are met. And because I believe it's not my position to say this is how it should be done, but I believe it's my position to show if things can be done in a different way with collaboration. I think it can ease their fears and make the changes or at least transitioning smoother. So
before we need to wrap up in a few minutes here, but I have one more question for you. And so a large part of what you described is it seems to me is going to require your presence. It's going to require that you be in the room because you have to help them sort out.
Initially, yes.
Yeah, initially you have to help them sort out what is going to be or what's the most important message on this slide. And they're all confused. And they see 4 messages and you're like, "No way, man, you got to reduce it to 1." So so a lot of that work is going to require Alper to be in the room because Alper is going to help us stay focused on reducing this down to 1 really important message. And then at the end of the day, Alper leaves and they're back on their own. They're at their cubicle or at their desk or whatever. How you're not in the room anymore. They have to walk through this on their own now. How do you ensure that they're going to be able to walk through this on their own when you're not in the room anymore?
Well, it's the same case with me because what I'm trying to have them do is simplifying their message. And what I need to do in my case is simplify my message towards them.
Okay.
And it is asking them to vigorously look for the most important message at any given slide, at any given information.
Okay.
If you have a slide deck of 30 slides, go through them and find the most important, the crucial, the inevitable message, let's say, that you cannot continue without conveying and build around that. So I think that's kind of the mindset, the perspective that I would like to leave them with.
Okay.
So that when I'm not in the room, they can think, okay, what is the most important thing? What is the one thing that I can definitely not omit? What is the one thing that I definitely want to leave my audience with in this slide? I think those are the questioning, the mental internal questioning that I would want to leave them with.
Okay. All right. So we've got to wrap it up today. So thank you very much, Alper, for helping walking me through this.
Thank you. Good talking to you.
Thank you for listening to The White Rabbit with Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or through your favorite feed.